Well, hello and welcome to Minnesota Medleys. I am Travis.
I'm Jess.
And we have a very exciting episode today with a Minnesota author by the name of Julie Jo Larson, and we'll get to our interview with her shortly. We do want to say a very, very profound and heartfelt thanks
Thank you
to the people of Hendricks, specifically Jessica, and also to David Blees, who did the interview with us. He's the city administrator. So appreciated his time. And
I just got to say, holy buckets, Hendricks.
yes, it was an interesting thing. They how much they shared our post when we started promoting the Hendricks episode. And they shared it, the city of Hendricks shared it, and it resulted on the day of our release of that episode, it was downloaded 4 times more than any other episode has been in one day. It smashed any records we had. And just so thank you. Thank you very much for your sharing and for proving that you don't always have to buy advertising to create something successful. Word of mouth is a great tool as well. Thanks, Hendricks.
Yes, thank you.
So we're not going to talk much right now because we do want to get to this interview. It was a great one. Julie Jo Larson is from Brainerd. She is an author and a public speaker, and she's a neat person. Like Jess said, when we got off the phone with her, she goes, I just feel like she's a kindred spirit. She really does things that are good for other people and benefit others. And the fact is, she's doing things that interest her.
Yeah.
And that she doesn't just sit back and say, well, this is life. And no, she creates adventures and unravels mysteries and is kind enough to share them with us. So without further ado, we will present you with our interview with Julie Jo Larson. Well, here we are, as promised, with Julie Jo Larson, an author out of Brainerd. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I almost said the wrong town.
Were you going to Bemidji?
I was going to go to Bemidji because I have something on here about Bemidji. Okay, welcome, Julie Jo.
Yes, Julie Jo.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing this. You are a very, very busy person, so you're taking time to share with us some of your goings-on is greatly appreciated.
Yes.
You wear many hats.
Yes, you do.
On your web site, it says you're an author, you're a public speaker, you're a story catcher. More on that in a bit.
Yeah.
You have a blog going on your website, Julie Jo Larson. That's Larson, S-O-N. JulieJoLarson.com. You are the founder of the Misstorians. You're a licensed social worker. You're the assistant director of Trio Student Support Services at Central Lakes College. Member of the Cuyuna Rock Gem and Mineral Society. Cuyuna.
Yeah.
Yep, the Cuyuna.
Yep.
Member of the Crossing Arts Alliance. You've also served in the past on the Crow Wing County Society Board and the Humphrey Center for American Indian Studies. So, no moss on you.
No, you are moving.
I try to move. I think when I slow down, that's when I get in trouble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
I
if
hear
I
you.
keep busy, then I don't think I'm going to get old, but also then I don't get into trouble. So it's best that I keep busy.
Keep it.
Very good.
Absolutely.
The I wanted to touch. I really like this description here about story catching. It says on your website, JulieJoLarson.com, it says intentional story catching is a movement in the making, ensuring survival of the stories through oral and written traditions. Story catcher is all about catching or capturing stories, your own story and the stories of others. That is, I just love the definition of that. It feels so much more than, hey, guess what I heard? Or something like that. Can you elaborate a little bit on why you wear that particular hat as story catcher?
Well, it actually came from a book by Christina Baldwin, and it's called Story Catcher.
Oh, okay.
It's making sense of our lives through the power and practice of story. And, storytelling is one of the oldest arts there is in humankind.
Yeah.
Long before we were writing, long before we were drawing on, things that people could always interpret, we were telling stories.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we lose the facts. So when I'm doing my story catching, a lot of what I do is field work and research. I'm trying to prove that something happened or someone did something or something. So if I hear something, the Black Cemetery by Wealthwood, when I started understanding that research about, understanding that there was a Civil War veteran, a Black Civil War veteran buried on the North Shores.
Yep.
Yeah.
Until I could multiple times through multiple sources say, yes, this is true, I'm not going to believe it. And I think with story catching, you really need to hear the story by multiple people, but you need to be able to find a fact or, you've got to find a fragment of something that you can pull together.
Yeah, and then link it together.
Oh, yeah,
almost.
yeah.
Well, you obviously have a sense of curiosity and wonder and part Nancy Drew and because it's no small task, some of the things you have done, whether it be the research or the miles you've put on your mucklucks. Well, as it says too, you've traveled countless miles around the region.
Yeah.
And I this kind of ties into, I believe this would tie into perhaps how the Mystorians were formed.
Came to be.
Did you, because I was going to ask you too, when you decided to start publishing those stories, your adventures, because it certainly goes in hand. That, like you mentioned, the cemetery in Wealthwood, what a neat thing to not only have gone and done, but for me to sit and read about it, I was blown away. It was just you captured everything and really did an honor for those people that are buried there. So definitely. Somewhere in there, I do have,
and their families.
Yeah, that's right.
That are still here today. That we're able to have reunions and be connected to their families.
I think that was probably the most important thing I did when I was researching they call it the Strader Cemetery, or the Black Cemetery.
Okay.
The pinnacle of that whole ordeal was watching the faces of the family members that came up from the Twin Cities. And they had been up here and they hadn't been able to see, they couldn't find the cemetery.
Yeah.
And it's, I have to be honest, like 80% of what I do is just somehow dumb luck or an ancestor long dead guiding me. I don't know what it is,
interesting.
But it's just you find this thing, and just the fact that I could find the ancestors, the descendants down in the Twin Cities was crazy. But watching their face when I led them to the cemetery and they climbed over this little tiny fence and they saw the stone and this little breeze came up out of nowhere and it just felt like a hug. And the ancestors just sighed and we all had little tears. It was just so emotional to know that these people had been lost for decades and decades and decades.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was a really neat thing about what I do is I'm connecting people with the past and with things that they thought was lost. And that's the great thing about story catching. I'm finding things that were lost and giving them back to the people that need it.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I got the goosebumps. with that.
Yeah. I personally have a strong feeling when it comes to cemeteries that are forgotten about and that kind of thing. And no matter what your one's belief is on mortal remains and that kind of thing, the fact is that markers are put so that they mark a place where one can go and remember. And the fact that you are rediscovering and bringing to light these places where people can go and remember, I think is amazing, is admirable. And yeah, I love that. I also find it very fascinating that you have worked with a group, maybe was it Crowing Lost Cemetery or some group like that?
Oh yeah, when I was part of the Crow Wing County Historical Society, I was on the board for quite several terms.
Okay.
And there were a lot of cemeteries up in this area that were, in the old and late 1800s, early 1900s, on family farms and family land. And, back then people couldn't afford headstones. So maybe they piled rocks up somewhere, or maybe they had a wooden cross or something.
Exactly.
And we had record at the Historical Society, a couple big binders that said, well, this is where this is, and that's where that is.
Okay.
And I had the crazy luck of some of this stuff I just put into my GPS.
Okay.
And I remember one guy ended up in his front yard, and he came out and he says, what do you need? And he wasn't happy about me being there. Until I showed him my card. I said, I'm part of the Historical Society. I said, I just want to see what I think is here. And he's like, well, the county told me there was no cemetery here. And I told him there was. He said, how did you know?
Yeah.
I said, I just plugged it in. And he said, nobody else has been able to see this. Plug it in. And this was the Carroll Cemetery, I think. He walks, he says, well, you're here. Come on over. And he shows me. And I'm like, oh, my God, there's like headstones here. And
my
the
gosh.
foundation of an old church. And I got pictures. And then I was able to document a bunch of these cemeteries so that the information isn't lost.
Yeah.
You got to ask permission always when you go on property. And some of these people, they're like, oh my God, how did you, is everybody going to come find me? No, not everybody's going to come find you. It's okay. I said that I just want to, if you're okay with showing me. And, you just look at that stuff and you think, oh, man, this is just bizarre.
Absolutely.
But it's a lot of fun, and I love finding old cemeteries. Trying to figure out who's where. Sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. I use dowsing rods with a group of women, and we were able to find where some more graves were.
Oh, wow.
At a cemetery that we thought was definitely not. It was outside of the fence, and it was like, yeah, definitely. There's I've never done that before.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just this weird stuff, but it's I call it wanderlust and inquisitive. I want to know the answers. And in order to know the answers, you have to put yourself out there and be willing to do some pretty weird things.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right?
Well, do the work. Do the work.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that, you mentioned with some other women, would those be the existing group of Mystorians at
No.
Okay.
This was even stranger than that. The Mystorians, so I should probably give you guys some information on that. Because, this is another, who does this?
I think it's the coolest thing. I think it is such a cool idea.
It is. So pre-COVID, I was doing a little bit of research on old buildings in Brainerd.
Okay.
And our church youth director, I knew a little bit. I'd known her when I lived in Moose Lake. And when I moved to Brainerd, then shortly after that, she moved here. So we knew each other a little bit because my kids went to the same church,
Sure.
Yeah. And I saw her one day, and I'm like, I'm so excited. I'm going to get to this building, and I'm going to go in the bowels, and I'm so excited. Someone said there's tunnels down there, and she's like, well, I'm going.
Oh.
I was like, oh, well, okay. She said, I'll bring my camera. Oh, great. Okay, I'll bring my notebook. Well, then my daughter's boyfriend's mom found out about it.
Okay.
Yvonne loved exploring. Oh, I want to come too. Okay, fine. So, we went into the bowels of the Last Turn Saloon, and we went to this beautiful building that E.L. Mink is in. It's the Citizen Bank building.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Just beautiful, old, like the Titanic on land, I call it.
Oh, interesting.
So we're touring all these old buildings, and Vicky's taking pictures, and I'm taking notes, and Yvonne is going, I wonder why this is here or that's there. We ended up picking up a friend, Lee, who's also from our church, even though all of us never hung out together. Lee says, I grew up in town. Let me see that. So then she came along. And because I was only part-time work at the college after I got my bachelor's degree from Scholastica in 14, in 13, I worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday.
Okay.
So Thursdays we said, let's just get together, and we couldn't think of a name. We were like, we should get T-shirts. We should get a name. We never got T-shirts. But my sister-in-law said, well, you're women and you're interested in history. What if you call yourselves the Mystorians?
Yeah, great name.
That is so great.
I was like, man, this is so perfect for us.
Yep.
And we ran around for, years, multiple years. And then I got hired full-time at the college, and my current position is the assistant director at CLC for Trio Student Support Services. And I thought, this is going to end our trips. But we did weekends until just before COVID. We would go here and there and still run around. COVID came, and it was just the nastiest thing. I had the opportunity to write my first book. My friend Yvonne, one of the historians, got cancer. But the photographer ended up moving to South Dakota.
Oh gosh.
It was just crazy. And I'm writing this book and writing the first book about the Minnesota Northwoods, and the photographer friend was taking some pictures, and we were peeking in windows of buildings that were closed because some things weren't open.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get arrested when we get arrested. Nobody ever said anything.
Okay.
But we got the research done. We talked to the people we needed to talk to. The book was published in April of 2021.
Okay.
Our kids got married. Yvonne's son and my daughter got married literally in our backyard.
So
in the woods. How appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we lost Yvonne 10 days later. She lost her fight to cancer, but how wonderful that she was able to contribute to the book, and our kids were able to tie the knot with both moms there and both dads.
Wonderful.
It was beautiful.
Wonderful.
But then the Mystorians took a little bit of time off. Leah's still here in Brainerd. We're working on restarting the group with a more permanent, because we've had other people that have joined us for 1 or 2 trips and then they're gone.
Okay.
And you kind of have to try out, because you need to make sure people they're brave enough to do some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I go to Canada every summer. I pick amethyst at the Amethyst Mine Panorama.
Okay.
I want a Mystorian who's not afraid to go across the Canadian border and come back into Minnesota.
Okay.
And that's the great thing about the Mystorian. You just have to be like, well, if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, well,
right.
How can we try it differently? Or how can we see what we want to see and get around things?
Yeah.
Legally?
Well, that sense of adventure and curiosity. And I mean, it's going to take a certain type of person. I really recommend to our readers to go to juliejolarson.com, and on the home page, when you scroll all the way down, there is a section for Mystorians, and these adventures, these mysteries that are unraveled and looked into it's very, very, very interesting.
Yep.
It just really neat stuff. And while it sounds fun to do at this point in my life, I'm glad somebody else is doing it and writing about it. So thank you.
Yes.
I do want to talk about another hat that you wear, of course, is as an author of these kind of guidebook style writings. You had mentioned your first one, 100 Things to Do in Minnesota Northwoods, Before You Die, and then it looks like just last March, wasn't it? March of 2023, your second book, 100 Things to Do in Minnesota Before You Die, kind of branched out of the Northwoods, and we've been having a lot of fun with these.
So much fun, kind of going through where have I been, what
Where
things
have
have I
been?
done,
Yep.
what do I want to do now that I've read this?
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. There's a lot of that. You now, have you been to all of the locations in these books? Okay.
And I get some readers, and they're upset with me because I haven't been everywhere. And since the publisher Reedy Press out of St. Louis, Missouri, since we got to, my goal has always been to use these books as a celebration of Minnesota.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Not my bucket list, but a list of things that people who are visiting or live here, things that they might want to check out.
Yeah.
So there are things, I have a sensitive hearing. I will never go to an outdoor concert and get my... But my friend Yvonne loved outdoor concerts, and she had a great collection of guitar picks, and she would tell me all these people she met, and there's pictures of her in the
how fun
in elevators, and those things I put in the book. You'll never catch me doing high heights. I'm not going to zip line.
I was going to say, you're not going to do that. Yeah.
But I love watching other people do it and see their excitement and their thrill when they land.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if it's a celebration of Minnesota, I need to make sure I have something in these books for just about everyone.
Well, and I was just going to say that. I mean, I guess it's almost better that you haven't done all of them because you are just one person, so you have your likes and your dislikes, and to write about them in a way that, well, like you said, because I've grabbed 100 things. Here's Minnesota Northwoods Before You Die, 100 Things to Do. One of them, let's see here, page 99 is Find the Lost 40.
Oh yeah, I love that place.
What a neat idea. Now, there are people who aren't interested in hiking and walking and that kind of thing. So that's not going to be, for them. But, somebody may be interested at, riding a horse-drawn carriage by Duluth's waterfront.
Yep.
Just a couple of... I love that you can open this up and just find something fun and different, unique. A lot of them are very unique.
I try not to have the typical, I don't want the big box stores. I don't want the, everybody can go to those big box stores. But I want, when you go to one of these towns or communities, I want you to be able to get a taste for what the people and the history of it are.
Okay.
Exactly.
The mom and pop shops, that's where you're going to find, you're going to find the culture and the heart of the communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I just all of a sudden had a flashback to when I was in junior high. And my youth director at church, there was one summer, he said, we're going to do a dart and go. And we all said, what in the world is dart and go? And he then started doing this on a pretty regular basis, where you would show up at the church, we would take a dart, we would throw it at the map of Minnesota. And if it was, he kind of said, we're going to go with this, this radius of so many miles away. So he kind of blew it up a little bit. So it was realistic. And we threw the dart, and wherever it landed, we would go to that place and we would seek out the town cafe or somewhere. We'd go and have lunch. And then we would, it was random. And I just think these books, you could open it up and say, all right, I'm gonna plan a trip, and this is where we're gonna go.
Well,
I could
see absolutely taking these on a road trip and looking up some of the ones that we've marked
Yep.
and working them into the route.
Absolutely. Definitely.
And if you go to the back of the book, there's itineraries that
Yes.
sometimes will connect multiple places.
Great idea.
Which is so great.
You go to Moose Lake, you might have 4 different things you're going to see in this tiny little Moose Lake, including some of the best pizza in Minnesota.
Oh,
So
nice.
my mom was just up there. A friend of hers lives in Moose Lake. And I said, hey, did you go to, is it Gary's?
Poor Gary's.
Poor Gary's. She said something about getting pizza. And I said, oh, did you go to Poor Gary's? She said, yeah, we did. And I thought, well, there you have it.
Oh, this is really...
She could have been reading your book.
This is really neat. I love, the suggested itinerary. Here's one, adult beverage tours.
Yes.
Here's one,
Yeah.
date night. There's fun with kids. But this is such a cool thing.
By season.
By season. Activities by season. That's a really, really cool idea. I mean, considering Minnesota is so distinctly 4 separate seasons, except for
this
winter.
year. Yeah.
But where we are anyway.
We're a little bit short this year. And I think, coming out of COVID with that first book, with the Northwoods book, it was important that I could get people out of their house safely.
Absolutely that.
So it was the COVID issue, but then it was also our typical, it was long winters and the cabin fever.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do in early spring? What are you going to do? How are you going to get out of the house? And not everybody likes to be outdoors.
Right.
Not everyone wants to be in a grand theater or a museum. So what can you do every season to get away from what you already know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's, I like how you think. Are there any, in these books, are there any events or places or anything like that about which you've written that you have not done, but you plan to, would like to? Any real standouts for you?
Yeah, so I when I was writing the 100 Things to Do in Minnesota Before You Die, in 2022, I caught COVID that June. For the first time ever. And it wasn't a bad case, but it was enough that it ended up tanking my vitamin D and B levels. And I was really just super tired. I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
The publisher was kind enough to extend my due date by a month, but I missed about 8 weeks of traveling. And it doesn't sound like much. 8 weeks doesn't sound like much, except I work full time during the day, so I weekends are the only time I could do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I missed things like the Ely Steam Sauna, which is number 66. I thought, oh man, that would be great.
Yeah.
It's history and it's just wonderful. I missed that.
Yeah.
And that was a tough one. And it was like, ugh. And then some of the good restaurants that I have in the book from the Twin Cities.
Okay.
Spoon and Sable, we have the 2022 Bartender of the Year right here for the whole country in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My girls were able to go last year. I missed that one.
Okay.
But there's places like that I want to see.
Yeah.
Sure.
Most of the outdoor things I've seen, I grew up in New Ulm in southern Minnesota. We lived by Moose Lake for many years, and now we're here in the Brainerd Lakes area.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I've been able to travel quite a bit, but there's some things, like that Ely Steam. It's like, oh God, I could use that tonight.
Sure.
I've seen that a few times up there, and it looks like a blast.
And, keeping in mind too, like I said, there are things I'll never do. But there's things like that I'm like, gosh. And there are things that I've done multiple times. The High Falls by Grand Portage is always a summer thing I do.
Okay.
When I had COVID, I was supposed to go up to the northernmost part of Minnesota, Engle Township.
Okay.
But I didn't get to go. So this spring, I stayed in War Road at it's crazy. It's a bed and breakfast Airbnb called Edda's Bend.
It has been. Okay.
Oh, it was wonderful. It's just like a corn silo, but they fixed it up. It's phenomenal. But then my friend Sheila and I were able to go up into Canada and then come down into Minnesota. got our picture taken with the bobber, you know.
Yeah.
But really, just to see a different port of entry into Canada, but a different part of Minnesota that's kind of connected, but kind of not.
Yeah. Yep.
And that I want to go there almost every summer too. It was just so cool to go into a different way of going into Canada.
Yeah.
And the fishermen were so much fun.
Oh.
That sounds fun. I know I hate to ask you if to do more work, especially when your last book isn't even a year old yet. It's only 10 months or so. Are you considering writing any more guidebooks, any more books, period?
Yeah, I actually am.
Okay. Is it something about which you can talk at this point?
I can talk about not the guidebook.
Okay.
But so I have my husband was born without arms, and he's a foot user. We have 3 natural children together. When our daughter was maybe 2nd grade, there was a little boy in class who didn't know a lot about the diversity, like my kids have always had a lot of diversity in their world.
Sure.
And my daughter would be like, hey, the teacher would be like, what did you do this summer? And she's like, oh, my dad and I went fishing and we drove boat. And, and she's like, Dad steers with his feet. And this little guy's like, no way. People without arms don't drive boats. And she'd bring in the picture or she'd show him her daddy. And this, and it was like, it wasn't just one thing. I worked at the school and the teacher would come up to me. She'd sit on my desk because I was a Title I paraprofessional, and she would, okay, we got to talk. Oh, great. Now what? Well, and I go, okay, fine. And then, it's Halloween. Draw a Halloween picture. So she drew a picture of her as a princess and her daddy with his hooks looking like a pirate.
Okay.
Aww.
And this gave me the idea of a book called No Way Ellie Mae. Just a little book where this little girl, it has got this very strong personality, and the little boy's got a strong personality, and the little boy says, no way, Ellie Mae, and Ellie Mae says, yes way, Brad, I say. People with arms can too. And I'm working right now on getting a mentor, and hopefully I can get a publisher for it, but otherwise I'm so passionate about this project. Just getting it out to the hands of kids and schools that I will self-publish if I have to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I believe you.
But it was just so cool. But it's, there's how many, I think there were maybe 2 foot users in all of Minnesota when I married my husband.
Okay.
And that was it. And he drives with his feet. He changed diapers, To me, he's always just been Steve. And the kids, he's always just Dad.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
But No Way Ellie Mae brings into the reality that the rest of the world doesn't look like our family.
Right.
Yep.
So we're working on that. I'm working on a collection of short stories called The Babe and the Phoenix. I have a wonderful author support group up here in the Brainerd Lakes area, and there's maybe 12 to 15 of us that attend St. Benedict's. Every summer we go to something called Camp Candace. And what we do is we're locked into the Spirituality Center for an entire Monday through Friday.
Wow.
Okay. We have Sheila O'Connor from, she was teaching at Hamlin. She just retired. She comes and actually runs it like a class. So she wrote a book called Sparrow Row. And in the morning, we get up, we have breakfast in silence. No one talks until noon. That's our writing time.
Love it.
At noon, we eat together, and then we have Sheila teaching us things like everything. We've learned so much from her. Point of View was last year.
Okay.
And then we have an evening meal together, and then we get together in these gazebos or areas, and we take turns reading what we've been writing. And we don't get it's not really a critical feedback time, but it's a time to kind of let people know what we've been doing. Not everyone is published.
Yeah.
All of us write different genre, but it's just a really good, feel-good support group.
Definitely.
Only women, sorry, hand-picked women, actually. The organizer handpicks to make sure that our personalities are going to match because we are in such close quarters. But that's my summer retreat. And then in February, I go to Pequot Lakes for 3 days, and we get together in a smaller group. But that's the support system that I've been fortunate to be a part of up here.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a wonderful one.
Oh, yeah. You can't ask for a better group of people. I was part of the Brainerd Writers Alliance for quite a few years. I haven't been for a little bit now. My weekends are just really traveling and doing book events and, trying to encourage other people to get out there and see things and do things.
Yeah. Yep. Well, these 2 books, well, and speaking of your future books, I know will be great successes. They, if the history proves to repeat itself, because these are just fascinating. They're well done. They're very concise. They're really, really interesting, and they are also available on your website. I want to make sure that our listeners know that. 100 Things to Do in Minnesota Before You Die is only $22.50. 100 Things to Do in the Minnesota North Woods Before You Die is only $17. That is on JulieJoLarson.com. That's Larson, S-O-N. And we don't want to take up, too much of your time, Julie Jo, but we just have really appreciated this time, and we look forward to hearing more from you.
Most definitely.
In the very near future.
You've been so supportive of us, and we just say thank you for.
Thank you.
And
it's so much fun watching your podcast and seeing, kind of where you've been. I have a suggestion though, because if you do take these books and you go off on, you open it up and you go somewhere, please take the book with you. Yeah, and if you're in a restaurant, have the people who are waiting on you sign the book.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Oh, yes.
Make a little note of what you ate, if there was a cool music or light or a smell or a sound or something. And then when you go home, you'll be able to open it up to that page and you'll experience it again.
Such a
combination
good idea.
like a stamped passport journal.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a fun idea.
Definitely would be.
Well, Julie Jo, thank you.
Thank you
very,
so
very
much for the time.
Yeah, we want everybody to please go to Julie's website, JulieJoLarson.com. Check out her books. Check out
follow her on Facebook.
Follow her on Facebook. Check
Julie
out the
Jo Larson,
Nestorians.
author. Yes.
You won't be disappointed. Pretty amazing gal. So thank you very much, Julie Jo.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Have a great adventure now.
All right.
Thank you very much.
So inspiring.
Yeah. Well, as you can see here, why Jess calls her a kindred spirit. Her sense of adventure is just absolutely amazing. And in these books, we have to mention too that they are available at JulieJoLarson.com. That's Larson, S-O-N again. The 100 Things to Do in Minnesota Before You Die and 100 Things to Do in the Minnesota North Woods Before You Die are available on her website. I just got to say really quick, I feel like if I say these out loud, I'm more likely to end up doing them. Just a few for a wish list, bucket list type of thing that are listed in the book. For me, John Bear Grease Sled Dog Race.
Which was canceled this year.
It was. Super unfortunate, but I think it was a wise move.
Yeah.
Which we know that it was a very hard call for the organizers because a lot goes into that by many people,
and dogs,
yep. But I think they did the intelligent move. So I want to do that sometime. I do want to get on the William A. Irvin, that ship right in Duluth.
I think I've been on there.
Have you? Okay. I mean, I've been outside of it plenty of times, and it's one of those things you look at. Especially at night from a distance, you're like, well, that's haunted. And it certainly got that vibe from the outside. I'd love to get in there. I like nice things. I like to shop a little. I would like to get to the Bemidji Woolen Mills. I think they just make amazing stuff, and I would love to check them out. just a couple others of mine. I want to get to the Ely Steam Spa.
Yeah.
I do want to bike the Paul Bunyan State Trail as well. That's just something I would love to do. What do you like?
I really want to go to the Palmer House.
Oh,
and,
yes.
she's got some connections there we could chat with.
Oh, great.
Julie Jo mentioned some people. So I just think that would be fascinating to stay there and, with the unregistered guests and see who we can chat with.
Considered like one of the most haunted places in the state. So,
Yep. I've been to powwows in South Dakota, but I really want to go to a powwow here in Minnesota.
Okay.
I would love that. There's just something about the powwow for me. Whitewater rafting on the St. Louis would be so fun. Ooh, I whitewater rafted in Montana in 1989, and I loved it. And I just think that would be so great. Then I also want to check out the Wings Airport Cafe in Brainerd, because that just sounds so interesting to me, to have a dinner or lunch at the airport and have planes taking off and landing right next to you and maybe see some stars. She said there's celebrities sports and otherwise that are sometimes popping in there. I just think it would be fun.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah.
And then I would also, similarly interesting, would be to go to the Igloo Bar at Zipple Bay, which sometimes it sounds like it's floating.
Oh, really?
It's on the ice.
Yeah.
You have to drive your car across the lake to get there, or take a snowmobile. And I think depending on where they set it up, its location changes in the bay, but it's typically in Zipple Bay. And they serve food there. You can they have heated porta potties. You can go ice fishing, which I've never done, but it would be fun to hang out in an ice fishing house, just because that would be a fun thing to do. Pedal Pushers Cafe in Lanesboro, because we've talked about wanting to go down to Lanesboro, and I just think it would be fun to eat at a place called the Pedal Pushers Cafe.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Chase on the
pedal, Pedal.
Yeah, pedal, like the
pedal
bike.
Well, it is a bicyclist's paradise.
Yes, in Lanesboro. Yes. And then Chase on the Lake in Walker. My mom and my cousins and I went there. We visited Walker this summer, and we checked out the hotel. Yeah,
very cool pictures.
Very cool stories there. Very cool. It's a cool resort, and they've got stuff year round there, and some unregistered guest types of things happening there. Yeah. So I just think it would be a very fun destination to check out sometime.
Yeah, it would.
Lots of intriguing places in Minnesota.
So again, speaking of cool things to check out, do look into these these books by Julie Jo Larson, and they're well worth it. Take them on a road trip. She does some very cool way of organizing them in the back, where you can tour things by season or get an itinerary that like sets up a convenient route where you can hit a few things. It's just done very, very well, both of them.
Cool stuff.
So thank you. Cool state.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, thank you again for tuning in. And if you have any suggestions about some Minnesota specific things you'd like to hear us cover, please do write to us at minnesotamedleys@gmail.com. And certainly go to minnesotamedleys.podbean.com. Check out a few more episodes. Again, our thanks to Julie Jo Larson, and we will see you next time.
Bye.